Hey, let's chat about some costs that are involved when you purchase a home. So, if you kind of just go through the contract when you purchase a home, the first thing that you're going to need to think about is your earnest money. Your earnest money is kind of like a down payment towards your purchase, and it shows the seller that you are serious. You've got some skin in the game and you're willing to let the title company deposit that money, and it will sit there until closing, and then it will be credited to your side of the transaction. So earnest money is typically about 1% of the sales price. So that is something you will need to be prepared for. Then the next thing that you need to think about is an option fee. An option fee buys a buyer so many days to be able to back out for any reason, and that's non-refundable. So that option fee is usually, it depends on the house, it depends on the market, but it's typically $100, $200, $250, something like that. It's not usually a really big amount of money. It could be on a larger property or maybe with a contract that has some things in it that the seller might not just love. And so typically it's not a huge amount of money though. And that option fee is also paid when you go under contract, and you have to submit that with your earnest money. We're going to submit all that within the first 3 days of an executed contract. The next thing, if you have a lender, well, actually before that, the next thing I'm going to need you to pay for would be an inspection or home inspections. It could be more than one. You're going to have a home inspection. Let's just say it's $500 to $600. It's based on, each inspector charges a certain amount, and it's based on the size of the home. And there are additional charges for certain things, like maybe a sprinkler system or an outbuilding, if they need to go inspect the electrical and everything out in a big outbuilding or a small outbuilding. If you have a pest inspection, which we're always going to recommend that you do that, at least we are in East Texas, that is going to be an additional fee sometimes. Some home inspectors do both. If you have a pool, that's going to be extra, and you might want somebody special to do that in addition to your home inspector. Same thing with a septic system. Sometimes, we do a basic septic inspection. Sometimes people want a more in-depth one if it's an older system or we're unsure about some things. But you will have to pay for inspections along the way. And the reason that's a buyer cost in Texas is because you are doing your due diligence as a buyer. Inspections are not pass or fail. They are just information for you as a buyer to know what it is you're getting into, and it gives you an opportunity to potentially negotiate some repairs or maybe some seller concessions when you are the buyer with those inspections. So that's a cost that you will have. The next thing that would happen is if you have a lender, then you would be paying for the appraisal fee. And that gets paid directly to the lender, and the lender deals with you on that. And of course, if you didn't have a lender, then you would not have that. And then after the appraisal, you potentially could have a survey. So survey, if a seller has a survey, we can try to get that, give it to the title company and the lender. Hopefully they will accept the existing survey. If not, you might have the additional cost of a survey. And then of course, when you come to closing, you're going to have whatever, your terms of your loan are, but you'll have your down payment, and you will have closing cost, which will include like origination fees. Possibly you could buy down your rate. You could have the appraisal fee in that at the end. You could end up having to pay for the title policy. Typically in our market, it is a seller expense, but everything in the contract is negotiable, so that could be added on. But at closing, you're going to have your side of your closing disclosure, and the seller will have their side, and you will have, all of your costs will be on your side, and all of their costs will be on their side. You will have some taxes. Now, if you escrow in your taxes and insurance, then that will be an additional cost in your closing cost as well. Lender will require you to pay so many months of those things up front, of your insurance up front. And your taxes, the seller will pay their portion of the taxes at closing, and that will be credited to the buyer. And then when the tax bill comes out, then the buyer will be responsible for that previous year's taxes, or for that existing year when they bought the house, for that whole year, because the seller will be crediting that to them at closing. That's if before the tax bill has come out. that can get super complicated. But the point is, you're probably likely to have taxes involved, whether you're a buyer or seller, either way, right? So that's another cost involved in there. There is potential that as a buyer, you could have to pay a portion of your buyer's agent's compensation or even all of it. So that could also be a cost in there. And that is between you and your agent. A lot of times sellers will pay that, but it is negotiable. And so it could be one of those things where maybe the seller is willing to pay a portion of it and you've agreed to pay your buyer's agent a certain amount. There's a gap there, and so you could pay the difference on that gap. I think for the most part, I've covered all the costs that I can think of at this moment. When you are a buyer and you are purchasing a home, those are the kind of things that you need to think about. And then I always tell people, you also need to remember that when you become a homeowner, all the maintenance is now on you. So you want to have some savings if you can, to make sure that if you have something go wrong in the next few years, then you have the funds to cover that. I hope that helps. If you have any questions, put them below. Please like and subscribe. Thanks for joining me. Bye-bye.